Well, I'll be brief, and then obviously open it up for questions, is what you guys have. But this is all about a rivalry week and moving past. I'm sure you have questions. I don't have any updates on injuries of any sorts today as of yet, so there's not a whole lot there. But moving forward, this is about a rivalry week, and this is, what you love about college football. And there's no doubt that, what happened last year is something that's fresh in the minds of everybody on this team and a part of this program. And so, we've got our work cut out for what we need to be able to do and learn from what happened last year and understand and recognize that this is what makes college football great. Your ability to have rivalry games, your ability to, play in rivalry games, and then, obviously to win rivalry games. That's what it's all about. So the focus is on that. The focus is moving forward. The focus is understanding and recognizing, obviously, what happened last year and what it is that we need to do to change all that happened last year. It'll be a physical, tough, hard-nosed game. Nothing different than what you would expect from an Iowa-Wisconsin football game. And I think it'll be exactly that. And now we got to get ourselves prepared for that, and we got to make sure that Saturday night we're ready to roll.
Luke, you said no injuries or no injury updates, but did you see enough from Hunter that, let's say Billy can't go, that he would be the guy at quarterback?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I would say. Again, there'll be a plan both ways. I think Danny had only 3 snaps in the game, but Hunter has done a good job. He will continue to get some more opportunities. Danny will have some opportunities as well, and we'll have to see how that goes. But I did. Even after watching it, I thought what we asked Hunter to do, he played with poise. He did the thing we asked him to do. He took care of the football and for the most part, and so I think we can definitely build on that and build with him in different ways.
Luke, after the game, you kind of talked about the defense maybe wearing down a little bit, just because of the way the game went. After watching the tape, in what ways did that wear show, and how do you kind of?
Yeah, it's more of a frustration. You can tell, like some of the sound things you did in the first half, you became a little bit unsound of doing them in the second half, and that's just, I don't say that it's a physical fatigue. You played a lot of plays. The third quarter was a long quarter. It gets into some of that mental stuff. It gets into, hey, we got to go make a play here, and then put you out of position on some of the things that happened. And that's probably the only thing that I would say defensively is like, man, we got to come out that second half and make sure, that you're mentally ready to roll. And that's probably the one thing that was different from the first half to the second half. We didn't, again, there's mistakes all over. It's no different than any other game. The bigger mistakes in the second half, they were able to take advantage of, and that's what was the difference. I'd say, and I call that fatigue. It's not he let down physically. The guy, no, it's more of a mental fatigue. That, hey, how did we not get lined up to this? How did we get misfit a little bit to this? How did we not play this the way we played it even in the first half? And so that's where I would say, hey, that's where we've got to continue to build and do a better job, defensively in particular.
You were mentioning Hunter playing with poise, but maybe what are some of the other kind of physical attributes that you like about Hunter that maybe you don't get with Danny, and how helpful was it in terms of him maybe not taking as many sacks?
Yeah, I think the nature of what Hunter does bring is he does have a quick release. He does have a bit of a stronger arm. I think he's got a really a good arm, and so I think there's some things that suit to him and fit his style a little bit better. And I think those are some of the things you saw us try to do. Now we just got to be able to build off of that. But he is a well-rounded guy. I mean, it's not that he doesn't have some athleticism. It's not that he doesn't have the ability to run the football. As you get into some of these things, it's obviously it's a little bit tougher sometimes when you get limited in the number of quarterbacks you have. So you got to be careful in the situation that you put him into. And last week in particular, it was a very, very aggressive front. There was some really dynamic edges, so obviously he had us to prepare in our own way for that. But, you just gotta kind of figure those things. And each and every week, what guys' strengths are. We're going to continue to build to those things. And now we got to ask him probably do a little bit more.
Luke, you talked about one of the challenges for the offensive line not being able to practice together just because of your injury situations. Did you see what you wanted to see in terms of the 5 that played Saturday? And do you think those guys can at least be out there together this week?
What is that? Our 5th starting group up front, and I would hope that we can be very similar in that starting group. I mean, again, like I said, it's Monday. There is a growth, and there are definitely some things that you take good hard look at the first drive. There's always things you can do better, but that's a better depiction of some of the things that I think that we can do. And so, yes, I hope and I believe that's that combination of those guys getting a better feel together. Obviously, Davis doing a pretty good job. I'm not saying it was flawless by any means, but for a guy who's played his first game ever at center in his 5th year of college football, probably taken more than 2 snaps. It was the first time 2 weeks ago. There's a lot of things that we can build off of, and I think that's where we got to continue to go. And like I said, it's a Monday right now. Hopefully on Tuesday we'll have that group of 5 guys that are there together and able to work together. And with the right attitudes like they've had, they will continue to grow and get better. And we'll do things as we learn, as we go, that give us a best chance to have success, right? I mean, you can't, just do exactly what you want to do all the time. You got to do what your guys can do, both offensively and defensively. And I think that's where we have to do our job as coaches is, hey, let's give ourselves the best chance to be successful by asking guys to do things that we expect and know that they have a chance to be able to do, as opposed to asking them truly maybe to do something that is probably outside of their capabilities.
Luke, you said after the game that you're going to evaluate, every play and about the competitive spirit of everyone on the team. When you watched the film, what were your takeaways from that?
Well, I'm not going to sit here and divulge all the things I think. There's enough competitiveness, there's enough competitive spirit that it just has to continue to permeate throughout. And I think that's where, as you ask who's available to go, and what it really comes down to me is who has not say the willingness, because everybody wants to play, but who has what it is that you're looking for. And if that means we put some guys in some different spots and some different positions because, they have the competitive spirit and the competitive nature that give you the best chance to win on Saturday, that's what we've got to be able to do. Whether they're young or they're old. And I think that's where, you got to have to battle through some of those, young guy issues if they are the guys that have the most competitive spirit. We didn't get to see some of those guys, and that's from a game like that where I would say, man, I'd like to have seen a little bit more of, Mason Posa or Cooper Catalano or some of those guys that just to say, okay, let's really evaluate what your competitive spirit looks like, in those kinds of situations. And so we'll give some more opportunities, this week, and obviously practice-wise, and go from there. But there's not a lack of it. I just think that they're the true highest of high ends competitors are the ones that show, especially into that 3rd quarter and 4th quarter, of what it is that you're looking for.
Luke, a lot of the offseason conditioning and training was focused on that Iowa game a year ago and the number 42. How much do you think all of that matters in this moment, or how much is about?
Well, I hope it matters. I mean, that's the whole idea of it. I mean, you can't dwell upon things. That's what you've heard me say it over and over. This competitive maturity really is. It's not accepting what happened last week, but it's moving on from what happened last week, right? It's recognizing what happened last year, but not dwelling upon what happened last year. I mean, it's like anything in studying history. Like if you don't make sure you understand and recognize it and learn from it, then you're condemned to repeat it, and that's what we can't have happen. So, yeah, I know it's not the easiest thing in the world to sometimes move on and to block out the noise, but what else can you do? And so that's the challenge that the guys have in front of them, and I think it helps that you have a rivalry week. It helps that you have done some things and talked about this that they can recognize how important this is and not to dwell upon the things that happened 36 hours ago. So that's going to take some competitive maturity. I think we got what that takes. And again, as we get out there on Tuesday and Wednesday, you get a better feel for what that looks like and who those guys are that still have that distaste in their mind and ourselves on saying, hey, our best players are going to play on special teams, and this is what we have to be able to do. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge, I think, that's been greater than any one that we've had so far this year. I'm not saying that we haven't played against dynamic guys, like, right? I mean, Alabama had some dynamic speed and some returners and some things like that, but it's not just the returner. I think what they've done a phenomenal job and will continue to do a phenomenal job of is there's a competitive spirit. There's an effort level that I don't care who it is that goes on the field, right? I mean, whether it's the punt return team, the kickoff return team, the punt block. I mean, you can call them whatever you want to call them. You're going to be challenged, and it's not just schematically. I'm not saying they don't do a great job schematically, but you're going to be challenged on your ability to be physical, your ability to win one-on-one, and your ability to outplay them in every unit, especially the special teams.
As far as Matt Young goes, what is he giving you these last 3.5 games?
Matt's getting better. I think that here's a guy that was thrust into into a situation that maybe you didn't envision. He was going to be a guy that, as we went through spring ball and fall camp, heck, he'd shown us a lot of things. It was probably in a backup role with maybe some situational opportunities, and he's been thrust into this role of starting and really kind of controlling a lot of things on the defense, because that's what Preston had been for us. He was more of the guy that was making a lot of those calls and a lot of those checks. And as Matt fills into that position, that's still a role that that position has to be able to do. So he's done a good job at it. He works his tail off at it. And he's the guy that you keep talking about, that I keep talking about, that you see the growth, whether, you missed a tackle last week and we didn't get the guy down on the touchdown, the slant by the wide receiver. But you see a growth every single day from Matt, because he is a competitive guy. He's got a mind for the game of football, and he has a passion for the game of football. And he's going to be better tomorrow than he was yesterday, and he's going to be better on Wednesday than he was on Tuesday. And that's what you love.
Coach, you mentioned after the game that it's difficult to continue to put together 12-play drives and win games without a big play. So how do you address that? Is it trying to take shots down the field to your playmakers, or more setting those up earlier in the drive?
It's a combination. We put ourselves in some tough positions, I think, early on in the year where you almost try too hard to create a big play with, or it's some fancy shift or some different look up front, and I mean offensively in some ways, to say, hey, let's hit a revert. There's a balance to what it is. We've got to make sure, we've got to find a way to get our backs to second level and give them the greatest opportunities to make some of those plays. It doesn't mean we don't have to stretch the field at some point in time. It doesn't mean we don't have to connect down the field. But sometimes you start stretching for those things, and it actually works against you. So I think that us as coaches got to have a balance, and it's the same thing defensively. I mean, we've been decently sound in a lot of the things that we've done, but we also haven't created a lot of big plays. We haven't created the turnovers. The ball was on the ground 3 times this past week, which, is good, but all 3 of them, they recovered. Whether they made a great bounce or right back, it is what it is, right? You got to find a way to change that, and a lot of that has to do with effort and population to the football, as opposed to just thinking there's some special blitz or there's some special play. It's about, hey, look, we got to have some balance, but we got to find a way to get ourselves a second level. We got to find a way to put our guys in position that they do have to make some plays. There was probably a couple shots at coming down with the ball defensively last week that could have been differences in the momentum of a game. I'd say difference completely in the game. Some of them were early, but a difference in the momentum of the game that we've got to be able to execute with.